welcome to the Goway Industry Insider webinar. Hear from expert guests, including conservationists, explorers, tourism professionals, and everyday globetrotters to discover fascinating stories in the world of travel and be inspired to travel far and to travel often. Inspire, motivate, and educate. Goway Pro Industry Insider webinar. Now, today I'd like to welcome Vito Angelini. So I just did it with an accent when you told me not to. And Vito, as you'll hear in a minute, is a fellow Australian based in Los Angeles. And Vito is looking after the Vito. Is it an area or is it one spot, which is AlUla?
So it's a region, a town. Some people call it a village, but it's a thriving town.
Okay, and we'll get into a bit more about what that all is in a minute. But as we always do at the beginning of our webinars, Vito, can you just give us a background again now, as we've discovered you're an Aussie in LA, how you found yourself ending up representing a town within Saudi Arabia?
Sure. So I have a long history and background in travel and tourism from Melbourne, Australia. Have been here for almost 25 years, based in Los Angeles. And have worked with Tourism Australia, Virgin Australia, more recently. So very, familiar in selling of destinations, and know people that are working actually in AlUla in Saudi Arabia, that are Australian also, that are have called on local representation to help with getting that message out. So I'm working with Luke Jones at Advocate Travel Marketing to do that. He's also another Australian gentleman, by the way. So lots of Aussies in Saudi Arabia. We're everywhere, as you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Vito's in LA. I'm speaking to him from Toronto, and as he's just mentioned, some of his compatriots are now in and around Saudi Arabia, helping promote the country and also the region, which we're here to discuss today. So I'm just going to read something I picked off the dedicated AlUla website.
Okay.
And it is, AlUla is transforming into a once-in-a-lifetime experience for visitors worldwide, with over 200,000 years of largely underexplored history ready to discover. AlUla, Saudi Arabia's first UNESCO World Heritage Site, is rich with heritage and boasts a bright future open for exploration. So one thing I'd like to touch on first, and I only realized this or found out the other day as I was doing a little bit more research, the word or the town, well, one first thing, as you just mentioned, it's a town, and it's spelt capital A-L, capital U, lowercase L-A as one word. But I sort of saw somewhere that it's actually, I believe in Arabic, two words, al, A-L, and then capital L, ULA. But for English purposes, or is it for English purposes, why is it being compressed into one word with it being a capital U in the middle?
Yeah, no, that's right. It's for marketing purposes,
Right.
put
Okay.
simply.
Simple as that. Okay.
Simple as
Okay.
that.
So there's no cultural thing other than it is two words compressed into one. Okay. So
Correct.
before we get to where and what AlUla is, let's, for those who may not know in general, because it is a brand new destination for most people, including Goway, where is Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, so Saudi Arabia is obviously we're in the Middle East, and AlUla itself is in the northwest corner of Saudi Arabia. So we're actually it's an interesting location because it's closer to the border of Jordan and near Egypt. So Saudi
Okay.
Arabia is a big country. You can fit California into it 5 times, just
Oh,
to give
wow.
you a sense of how big it is. But again, given that we're in that northwest corner, we're actually more of and we are an oasis, which is one of the attractions of why people, particularly traders who are traveling through Saudi Arabia from Yemen to Jordan and beyond, were stopping in AlUla. So that's kind of the context, I guess.
Okay, then. So if someone wants to get to, first of all, Saudi Arabia, what's the easiest way, the most common way from North America to get into Saudi?
Yeah. Good question. So we look. There's a number of ways, and in the last 12 months, we've added a lot more flights. And being a former airline guy, I know the importance of having flights into your destination. We're fortunate in that we actually have an international airport in AlUla,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, and we're actually already in the process of upgrading the terminal to being a larger capacity, and we're adding a 5-star resort because it is one of the challenges of the destination is to grow our hotel inventory.
Okay.
But to get there, basically, you're traveling either on Saudia via Jeddah or Riyadh, and their schedule is on an alternating basis. So you could easily do a kind of a classic tour of Saudi Arabia, combining Riyadh into AlUla, out of Jeddah back home on Saudia. But there are options now that are opening up with Emirates via Dubai, and Fly Dubai now flies directly into AlUla, or you've got Qatar via Doha. From other parts of the Middle East, you've got Royal Jordanian from Amman in Jordan, and Flynas, which is, I liken it to like a Southwest out of Cairo. So, for people that are looking for more of a longer stay, Middle Eastern multi-country itinerary, we've got all of the major flight paths, connecting into AlUla.
Okay, so we've jumped ahead to some questions, but that's fine, perfectly fine. That so I'll jump in so we
Sure.
stay on subject to what we're talking about right now. So you mentioned flying. What's the main gateway into Saudi itself internationally?
So main gateway, the capital is Riyadh, and that would
Yep.
be the main gateway, or Jeddah. So those are
Okay.
really the main two gateways.
Right, and then as Vito said, you can connect by air into AlUla from those ones, and also internationally from other countries. So the first question is, can you also get to AlUla by road from somewhere within Saudi Arabia, and is it recommended?
So I had been fortunate to drive from other parts of the Middle East and down via Jordan down to AlUla and by car, and I thought it was a fascinating experience. The border crossing is very seamless, so it can be done, and it's not hectic or chaotic at all at the Jordan and Saudi border. I always recommend people have some cash, local currency cash. That's probably the only thing, just to make sure that as you're traveling through, you've got to pay
Your fees and
your
your
fees.
tolls, and yeah.
But I would more strongly recommend flying. I think
Right. Okay.
the flight time from Jeddah and Riyadh, it's about an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. So and again, in an area as vast as Saudi Arabia is, and given people are traveling all that way, I think it makes more sense to get to your destination and get to AlUla. And then it's probably a different story again if you're going from AlUla into Jordan or other places. Driving becomes more of an option, but again, flying is just as convenient.
Right. Okay. Then, so you mentioned Jordan a few times. So obviously, adding AlUla onto a Jordan itinerary is an easy thing to do.
Yeah, we position AlUla as a easy add-on destination.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably talk about how you'd spend your time in AlUla, but
Yeah.
definitely there are a number of ways that you can combine it. Jordan is one of the logical choices, just because they share also the Nabatean history, particularly as it relates to the tombs. Obviously, Jordan, you've got Petra. In AlUla, we've got Hegra. So there is
Now,
that narrative.
sorry to jump in there, because
Yeah.
often people will say that that AlUla, and in particular Hegra, is the Petra of Saudi Arabia. Is that a fair comparison for someone who may be looking at why go to AlUla?
Yeah, look, I think I have been to Petra,
Mm-hmm.
and it is yes. So you can kind of understand when you see the treasury, you do immediately recognise the Nabatean way of creating the tombs was very consistent, so they do look
Mm-hmm.
the same, but
Yep.
the experience is very different.
Right.
And Jordan's obviously done a great job of promoting Petra. There's a lot of people that visit. I think with AlUla, as you said at the beginning, we're largely undiscovered destination. So the visitor experience is going to be a lot more niche and boutique, and it might just be you and your traveling party at the foot of Hegra and nobody else. And that's probably the polar opposite of what the Petra experience is like.
Right. And that's what I was sort of going to lead to, which you've
Mm.
done nicely for me, in that
Hmm.
if someone was to look at combining the two, they would have totally different experiences in either. Like, you're not doing a repeat. It's obviously two different countries, naturally. It's the
Yeah,
same culture, but because of, I guess, the Saudi and AlUla being newer, it's more virgin in its experiences. And as you just mentioned, the crowds are probably much less as well, if you were to look at that as an option.
correct.
Okay, so what is AlUla? You've already said it's a town, it's a region, all the above. So what is it? And you've touched on it once or twice already. Why should someone go there, be it as part of a Jordan trip or as an extension to their Saudi Arabia trip?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously there aren't too many old but new destinations in the world. So we really position AlUla as a destination for people that have been there, done that. They're looking for an off the beaten path, destination that is largely undiscovered. So there is obviously the bragging rights that comes with
Yep.
being the first to visit any destination. But again, there aren't many destinations left in the world that can actually, say that.
Truly claim that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think with the experience in AlUla, obviously it's fundamentally based on history, heritage, and also the archaeological. Not a lot of people know this, but we have, over 15 active digs happening in AlUla. So it's a very important part of why people are going and what they're doing when they're there. So much so that we've actually had to implement archaeological tours for
Oh,
people that
really?
were expressing interest in that side of things. But even that aside, I mean, just getting to meet the people, the culture, the heritage sites. I mean, as you pointed out, Hegra being the first UNESCO site for Saudi Arabia. I mean, now Saudi Arabia has at least half a dozen UNESCO sites, but we were the first. And most people would say that a visit to AlUla is, the jewel of Saudi Arabia. So it is pretty
Nice.
much the must-see destination, because we do have all of this natural history and heritage there,
Mm-hmm.
whilst other destinations in Saudi Arabia are obviously building out a lot of their infrastructure. This is already there and ready for people to experience. So those would be and within that we have four main heritage areas that people can experience. And you don't need, um, whilst it's a vast area, you don't need a lot of time to experience AlUla in its fullness, because the great thing is a lot of the heritage sites are in close proximity to each other. So it's really more about the depth of experience and understanding, and really making sure that you're taking time to soak in that experience. And with the tombs themselves, we have over 110 tombs. So you're not just going to see one tomb. There are kind of cluster of tombs
Choice of, yeah.
to see, and that's just within that one area. We've got Dedan, which is another area of significance, and Nat Geo did a great documentary, if people are interested, a 44-minute piece just on the city of Dedan. which
Okay.
did provide a lot of reenactment work. So that was great. Jabal Ikma, which is the largest concentration of inscriptions in the country, and of course Old Town, AlUla, which is my personal favourite place to experience. So those are the 4 heritage areas within AlUla.
All right. So you've mentioned that the place AlUla itself is a town, was a settlement. So in combination with that, or in line with that, it's still a thriving town itself, regardless of tourism. I don't assume it's growing because of tourism. So what I'm getting at is when you go there, apart from seeing the ancient history, you're going to see modern day Saudi culture in action as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think Old Town AlUla is one of my favourite parts, is because that is the best where you're getting that real, slice of life experience. People were living in the mud houses there up until the 80s, and whilst they're being resettled nearby, people still use the old town because there's still the active markets, restaurants, retail. The amphitheatre is there carved into the rock. So and of course you can take a tour of the old town area as well, which is adjacent to the oasis. So you've got that really nice combination of green and reds there as well. And of course the people are actively using all of that. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's one of the more fascinating parts.
Right. You mentioned Hegra, which is the ruins, for one of, again, that's a general term, but the ruins are similar to Petra. You mentioned Jabal Ikma, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I've got down here an area, Madsurat Adira. Is that correct? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yep.
I probably just butchered that. You don't know what I'm talking
okay.
about. Okay. So what's in that area?
Yeah, so basically within that area, there's a lot of like cultural sites and experiences that people can have. We're building out. We're very big on arts and culture in AlUla, and so a lot of that is about creating spaces for that to take place. And part of that is because we have a huge festival and event program that takes place throughout the year. So it's often the space or venue for a lot of these experiences to happen. The festivals and events that happen in and around there take place from September through April. So it's quite a long program. We also do have experiences like Desert X, which are part of that arts and culture space. If people are familiar with the Desert X in Palm Springs, it's basically a number of arts and cultural installations in and around the desert area. But that is basically the hub or the focal point for the arts and culture scene.
Arts and culture. Saudi Arabia is, as we have determined, in the Middle East. It's known as a desert country. It gets hot. I think everyone knows that. So does AlUla see its own micro temperature? Is there a better time than other times within Saudi to go, or is it pretty much a blanket statement? You can go to Saudi and in turn AlUla between, and I'll let you tell us when to go.
Yeah, look, I mean, definitely we have year-round activity, and I would say the locals obviously know how to adjust, to the summer periods by, going to the markets later at night. Things stay open till 1 a.m. or later, and so there is that element. We have some of the events we have are in the middle of summer, the Desert Blaze event, which is like a marathon around the rock in the middle of summer. So that's for almost an extreme sport, but I would say realistically for visitors that are going to see the cultural and heritage sites, September through April, which mirrors the festival and event season, is the best time to go. I've been during both those periods, both in the September and March timeframe. You do see during the evening it will cool off. If you're at an outdoor event, sometimes they provide blankets to that extent.
Oh, really? Okay.
It does cool off. It is a dry heat. So it's not humid. Obviously focusing on hydration is key. And just, everyone's different. So they acclimate a bit different to that kind of weather. But I found it to be quite mild during those times.
Yeah. As an Aussie, that's probably fair enough. I think our North American partners who are used to the winters here, or at least in the northern parts of the US and Canada might have a different opinion to mild
Well, they love going
south.
to Palm Springs, so that
Oh
shouldn't be
yeah.
a problem.
Of the areas you've mentioned, Hegra is the archaeological area. What can you see and do in the region and town of AlUla? Like, I know there's, again, a lot of your marketing pieces is very famous photos of hot air ballooning.
Yeah,
Um, I,
sure.
I would leap to gather that there are jeep safaris, are there camel safaris? Tell me what you can do
Sure.
other than seeing the ruins and the cultural aspects.
Yeah.
What else can be seen and done in and around AlUla?
Yeah, so we normally suggest people are staying 3 or 4 nights. So I guess just to frame it and put it into
Yep,
context,
perfect. Yep.
it's going to take one day just to see the tombs, because remember there's 110 tombs, and you
Mm-hmm.
won't see them all, but just to see the majority. Obviously, you've got to allow for transportation, lunch at one of the rooftop restaurants potentially, and so that's one day. You've got the other sites can be combined. So you've got, for instance, Dadan and Jabal Ikma near each other, can be done in one day. And then you've got Old Town, which deserves, almost a day in itself. And in fact, we've just opened a boutique hotel there, so people can have that experience of living in the Old Town for a day or two, called Dar Tentora. So that's a really unique and boutique property that's open only 30 odd rooms. But
Nice.
beyond that, beyond those four heritage areas, we've got an adventure hub, which is run by the Warrior Group, and that's basically an area where you can do all of those things that you mentioned. So you can do the Via Ferrata, you can do zip line, which I did recently. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
There's, like you say, there is the dune buggies, there's the giant staircase. So yeah, there are a number of opportunities to augment that history and culture experience with some other things, and particularly if people are traveling maybe with older children, it's a good way to kind of say, look, today we're going to see history and heritage, but tomorrow we're going to go to the adventure hub and we're going to do Via Ferrata together. So something that just kind of takes in the geology of the place as well, which is fascinating.
Right. Saudi is obviously a oil economy, probably one of the wealthiest nations in the world. When they get stuck into things, they really get stuck into it. It would sound to me that AlUla has, as you mentioned, in 1980s, they're in mud brick huts. Now there's talking international airports. You've mentioned boutique hotels, rooftop restaurants. I would assume the infrastructure is well beyond the little oasis town that it used to be.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that, and again, having driven from through the Middle East, I've seen the different contrast around that, and I would say yes, Saudi Arabia does an amazing job of managing their infrastructure. So all the roads are very well paved. So you can rent a car and drive yourself if you so choose. But the accommodations, when they whilst we don't have a ton of options as far as accommodations, what we do have there is quality and is well suited to the international visitor that is traveling there, and providing a kind of a range of options as well. But yeah, I would say the infrastructure there is top notch. They do a great job.
So, from an accommodation choice point of view, you mentioned a boutique hotel in Old Town AlUla.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the options to sleep overnight in the desert, like Bedouin camp, for want of a better term? Do you have 3-star options, 4-star, 5-star? I know you have 5-star, but what's the range of options for people looking to get into AlUla from accommodation?
Yeah, I mean, we have Habitas and Banyan Tree really do kind of fit that 5-star plus luxury tented option, and so we see obviously they get a lot of play in that luxury end, but we do have some mid-range options, like Shaden, for instance, which I think is fantastic. It's kind of nestled amongst the mountains. It's more of a classic resort style setup, but still very Saudi in hospitality and feel. We do have other more Bedouin style accommodations as well. To your point about can you do camping under the stars and all of that. I mean, we working with companies like Goway and in turn with their partners on the ground, those options do exist, so they can be customized and tailored. Um, that's what they do. The Bedouins, that's what they're known for, is that type of living. So yes, you can experience that as well.
I'd hazard a guess that there's some good stargazing, being in the middle of the desert with, well, I guess if you got out of the town, there'd be very few lights around. So your view to the sky would be amazing.
Yeah, so we do have an area called Garamel, which is basically dedicated to the stargazing experience that we offer. It's a 1 hour drive, so it's probably the only exception to the rule where everything else is in close proximity. I mean, 1 hour is not a lot to
No, not really.
drive to get to for a stargazing experience, but that just gives you an idea how close proximity everything is. It's the roads fully paved. When I did the journey there, there were camels crossing the road, and it was all part of the experience. And
Yeah,
baby
of course.
camels, they're so cute. And then once you get there, there's some gentle off-roading just to get to the spot, and there's a great setup. They feed you, obviously. They give you the narration of the night sky as you see it from AlUla, and there's some great entertainment as well. So yeah, it's a fabulous experience and a must-do.
Excellent. You mentioned a stay of 3 to 4 days would be the recommended length. So what would be the minimum and what would be the maximum?
Yeah, if you're pushing it, 2 nights would be
Hmm.
pushing it. You wouldn't see everything, of course. You
Yep.
might get just the absolute highlight. Um, and but what we're seeing is average is 4 nights, 3 or 4
4
nights.
nights.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think what we're seeing, if anything, is people are choosing to stay a bit longer because once they get settled into the habitats or a banyan tree or just get a feel for the place, they're really wanting to extend their stay.
Well, I must admit, prior to coming into this conversation with you, I was anticipating probably 2 days at most. Again, I'm thinking, Petra, I didn't know enough about AlUla to make that or to have that recommendation, which you just have. But as we've been discussing, yeah, it sounds like 4, maybe even 5 days, if you have time, of course, would be easy to do, easy to fill your time with, and maybe even just some downtime.
Exactly.
With your effort, you being and the Saudi government and the tourism board out there pushing hard for the country itself, but obviously AlUla, as you mentioned, is the crown jewel. It is pushed to the top of things to see and do in Saudi. It's not Jordan yet from a popularity point of view. I'm sure one day it'll get there. But how far ahead should travel partners be advising their clients to book to get either the choice of accommodation and or the tours and activities they want to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we do see that because we do have a limited amount of accommodation, and particularly at that luxury end,
Hmm.
obviously booking way in advance is best, not only just from an availability standpoint, but just with the rates. I think you'll get a better deal, obviously, if you're booking well in advance. And as far as the activities, yeah, I'd say probably if you're booking in that, you know, 6 month window, 6 to 9 months,
Right.
if you can, I mean, look, a trip to the Middle East, and if you're especially if you're combining multi-country itineraries, is it's an adventure,
Yeah, yeah.
just like going down under, to Australia. It's you're going to be using your Thanksgiving and Christmas time with family to plan out that next big trip. If you're doing it then you're probably looking already at that next September to December timeframe when the weather's good. So that gives you 6 to 9 months.
Okay, that's again at this stage standard for most destinations,
Right.
other than mainstream Europe, which is crazy. Um, will Saudi, do you think, limit numbers to a place like AlUla? Like, do you think at a point
Yeah,
they'll say like enough's enough? We don't want to turn it into, again, this is, crass term. We don't want to turn it into a zoo and just pump it for
yeah,
all it's worth. Is that sort of on the planning horizon? Do you think?
absolutely. And I
Yep.
think a lot of that is just due to the fact that we're not on a port, so we don't have access to cruise ships. They're at least 3 hours away if they want
Hmm.
to come to Alula. We've got a limited number of properties, and while we're adding, properties, gradually and surely. That will take time, and obviously the capacity of and flights coming in will also limit or restrict access. And we are a destination. I think slow tourism is the theme that we're hearing a lot of, and I think AlUla lends itself to that. It's slow tourism. It's like I said, it's off the beaten track. So, and I think you've got to really have that strong interest in history, heritage, and archaeological to go there. And then of course there are other things to see and do while you're there. So I think there is that emphasis on sustainability as well, and community. So those things are all part of the consideration.
Okay. Now, we do have a lot of cruise agents that work with us in that they all book their cruise themselves because they're the experts in that, and they come to Goway for their pre, post, and shore excursions. So if someone does have clients on a cruise that does touch in around Saudi, getting to and from AlUla, again, you mentioned with the flights, shouldn't be a drama for, again, this is why I was asking earlier about, how quickly can you do AlUla? So if it's being wedged into a day and a half port of call, they could get to AlUla, do your words, the highlights quickly, and then get back to their cruise ship.
Yeah, and we're not, obviously we're not encouraging that because we want people to have the full experience.
Of course.
So, but if people are really keen about doing it, yes, of course, if depending on which port and what the options are, but obviously there's flights to out of Jeddah to AlUla, so that makes it easier. If you're going further up the coast, probably gets a little bit harder. There might need to be charter flights, or if they're driving, that's going to obviously be
time, of course,
a long time getting there.
Yeah.
So we want people to leave with an amazing experience and impression of the destination. So yeah, for that reason, even 2 nights we really think is a push, and
is a push.
We wouldn't even recommend that for an agent doing a FAM. So
okay. Safety for Saudi and safety in AlUla, if there is a difference, is everyone going to be safe? Are they going to feel comfortable in Saudi Arabia? Because we know there's baggage with Saudi. We're not going to get into it, but people do come to us with those questions. So let's address that now.
Yep. Yeah, no, sure. And I'm always happy to answer questions. I think it's important. We've started the journey answering basic questions around safety, security, treatment of women, and all of that. And I think all of that, we've seen a lot of progress even over the last 3 and a bit years that I've been working with the destination. I've sent people there on FAMs. They've all come back raving. People from all kinds of groups, including, women traveling alone. And they've all come back raving about the destination. I haven't met anyone that's come back saying that it was underwhelming. So I think the people are warm and friendly beyond what I believe we perceive. And I think that's one thing is immediately you'll get a sense of the hospitality. They're very passionate about their country, and they're very happy and willing to showcase their country. They're still learning the tourism industry and what that opportunity looks like for them. And so if anything, you'll probably see them being a little bit shy. But they, with some time, they do come out of their shell, and they're quite humorous as well. But I've had, again, from a safety security standpoint, I feel almost safer inside Saudi Arabia than other parts of the world, for sure.
Now, for females in particular, for AlUla in particular, are there any dress codes or dress rules they need to be aware of?
Yeah, look, the basic decorum is, and it's men and women, is covered from shoulder to knee. And that's kind of the basic expectation, if you like. I've seen people maybe from other countries, Europe mainly, dressing a little bit more looser, and revealing probably is a better way to say it. So I think, the way that Americans or Canadians would, go about their travel, I think most Americans, Canadians know how to dress accordingly. What we find, if anything, is people, once they're there, they want to go shopping, they want to buy in the buyer because they look great. And, you'll find that a lot of even the local women now are not, covering their face, their hair is down. As long as they're covered, again, from shoulder to knee, that is that is the gold standard, and that's
Okay.
pretty much it.
So,
There's nothing more to it.
right. So for a Western male, we're talking long pants and long sleeve shirts, or short sleeve shirts work.
T-shirts and shorts
Shorts is fine.
Yeah,
Shorts
yeah.
is fine
I
for now.
mean, most men would wear shorts more or less to the knee. I mean, again, that's kind of that's the standard.
Okay.
But there's no one there that's going to be pulling you up, especially in AlUla, about that. If you're at the resorts, for instance, and you're at the Habitas at the swimming pool or Banyan Tree, if you're in a bikini, that's totally appropriate for that
Right.
setting.
So basically within the walls of the hotel or resorts, your Western standards, for want of a better term. Now, for a female out in public, it doesn't have to be traditional coverings. It can be like just a long skirt. Again, it can be Western dress, but just covering from lower,
it could be
lower shin to shoulder. Yeah,
you could be wearing
hair.
your Lululemons,
Right,
and
right.
and that's fine. I mean, baseball hat, obviously you're in the sun, so you want to have that protection anyway. So yeah, I mean, there's no rule or right or wrong about what you can and can't wear. It's more just about the coverage.
Right. So Western women can go around with their hair, well, a hat, but they don't have to completely cover their hair.
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to wear a
great.
hat. You don't have to. You don't have. You can have your hair down. It's really more. I'm just trying to illustrate the point that people can be in their sporty wear or their casual dress, as long as they're covered from shoulder to knee. That's the main thing.
Perfect. I know that you have coming up. You mentioned the season being North American winter, which makes sense, which is also Saudi winter, but it's all relative. You have some events in that period. I know you have what's called Sky Festival, or Skies, plural festival, Wellness Festival, and an Ancient Kingdom Festival. Now, are they ones for this year, or are they annual events?
Yeah, so they are annual events, and so those will take place, like I said, over the course of that September through April. So they'll kind of, you'll see some start and stop, and then it transitions to other festivals and events. So, but it's around those themes that you indicated, and with the Ancient Kingdoms, for instance, they do like a Hegra after dark. So instead of the traditional, tour of Hegra during the day, they do like a candlelit version of that, so you can see it in a different light.
Now, is that only done during the festival, or is that available throughout the year or the season?
I'm sure there would be companies that would do it for like incentive companies, for instance, if they wanted to organise a special dinner there.
Right, so it's not like Petra where they have, I think it's 3 times a week, they have the light show or whatever it's called.
Not yet. But that's out. But we started doing the AlUla Skies Festival, and obviously the hot air ballooning was a major component of that, and that has, since that time we've now gone to a full-time operation with the hot air ballooning, for instance. So that's something you can do year round. And so so that's kind of typically how it starts.
Right. So in that instance, because again, when people do their research and go to the AlUla website, they'll see beautiful photos of Hegra at nighttime. So just for clarity for now, for those listening, that option at the moment is only as part of the festival. Outside the festival, unless it's a large group or incentive or a custom order, so to speak, event, it's not a ongoing option that it'd have to be looked at. And this comes back to planning, is what I'm getting at.
Right.
If you want that, look at the festivals, because they will bring up some new activities or activities that may not be offered throughout the rest of the season. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. And I would say that the experiencealula.com website, which is the main resource for all of this, is your best resource if you're looking for ideas and for what is happening when. But because there is a lot to see and do there, obviously we suggest working with obviously the likes of Goway to help with putting that all together, because it does become a little bit more complex. But in terms of knowing what's on when, they do a great job of communicating that and keeping their website up to date, so that you know what you can look forward to.
Right.
And they also, so that's probably just as a place to start to.
No, definitely, yeah,
to ideate and then work with Goway.
So the Goway destination specialists will also be aware of these, because they're kept informed and in touch with our local on-ground operator as well.
Correct.
So if you are looking at a trip into, or anywhere, but Saudi and in this case AlUla, and you or your clients are looking for the hot air ballooning, which sounds like it's an ongoing thing now, but maybe seeing Hagger at night or other aspects, speak to your destination specialist. They'll let you know when it's on and, as such, when to go, how far to book ahead for all those type of things as well. So, Vito, is there anything else you'd like to let our listening audience and viewing audience know about AlUla? Is there anything other than the festivals we mentioned? You mentioned you've just opened a new boutique hotel in AlUla itself. Anything on the horizon that people should be aware of?
Yeah, so there will be another property actually opening in the Hegra area, which will be the first time we have an accommodation, a boutique accommodation again in that area, which will be soft opening in November. So that's something for everyone to look forward to. I guess just in terms of the visa, it's an e-visa
Of course, yes.
for the US and Canada. So that makes things very simple. My only bit of advice is just to pay attention to the photograph. I always find that that's the trickiest bit of the whole thing, which, believe it or not, but otherwise it's a 24, 48 hour, process to get that done. The policy of the country is all are welcome. And when you arrive at the airport, you'll get that, impression immediately. And I think you'll just find that, people who are maybe nervous about, traveling to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is a very safe country to travel to. They have all of the infrastructure there, and they are very warm and welcoming. So I would not hesitate to send clients to Saudi Arabia and AlUla in particular.
Yeah, it's one of the places I've traveled extensively, been very lucky, and it's one of these places that I really want to get to, because I think it's a country that's been locked away from the West for a while. I think it's now, particularly next couple of years, is the right time to get in there before it becomes popular, which it will. It will become popular. From my research and training I do here through the Goway Pro Travel Academy, we do have a module on Saudi Arabia for anyone out there. We do have a whole section on AlUla as well, which I might have to expand on now after speaking to Vito. It's a great destination. I think there's, as Vito's mentioned, particularly AlUla, there's a lot of history there as well, cultural aspects to it, which are fascinating. Regardless of your opinion, I think it's a fascinating window to look through.
Yeah.
So just on a few more technical things, what's the currency and how can you get around when you're paying for stuff in Saudi?
Yeah, so the SAR is pegged to the US dollar, and it's so that's the currency. Things are very affordable when you're there, and we didn't even really talk about or touch on the food, which I think
we didn't, yeah.
Extremely underestimated. And when you're there, you're really spoiled for choice. And the cuisine is, very right in the sweet spot of Mediterranean and Middle Eastern, but with a lot of international variety, and it ranges from food trucks to Michelin star restaurants and shit. So,
and that's all available in AlUla as well.
That is range? In AlUla. I'm only talking about AlUla. We have 29 restaurants, and what you'll find is even during the festival season, there are a lot of pop-up restaurants that, again, they start as pop-up restaurants that then open up permanently in the area. So it's going to be a foodie destination. So whilst alcohol is still not permitted,
of course, yep.
They do have zero beers, which, for me works just fine when I'm there. You're not really thinking about it. You're not really, you do, when you're in AlUla, you do kind of, I feel like you do kind of, give yourself over to being in the destination, and you just get swept up in being in such an amazing, place with such great geology, great people, things that, you just wouldn't see, here in the US, and that's why we travel. We travel for the differences, exactly. Right? So,
100%. Well, it sounds like, as I mentioned before, Saudi is a fascinating country. I think people should look at, but the more I speak to you about it, I think AlUla, as you positioned it earlier in our conversation, is the crown jewel. Riyadh, Jeddah, lots of stuff to see and do, but I think it all revolves around what's sounding like, to me anyway. It would any itinerary construction would revolve around AlUla as being, the end or the middle of your trip, because it sounds fascinating with so much to do. It's beyond just the desert oasis, which it started as. It's It's got everything from stargazing to Michelin star restaurants, 5-star accommodation, overnight experiences, ancient culture, sitting on ancient trade routes, greenery in the desert, being at the crossroads of a couple of oases, and of
Correct.
course, Hegra, which sounds like it's stunning, and it sounds like now is the time to get to AlUla because there are a few people there at the moment. It's only going to get busier and busier, more popular and more popular, particularly as Vito and his team pour more resources into the country and keep doing a great job on promoting it. So on that note, Vito, really thank you for your time today.
You're
really
welcome.
Appreciate it. Is there anything, any last messages for our listening audience about AlUla?
No, I would just say no. I think if you're looking for an authentic, cultural, immersive experience, look no further.
Then AlUla. Perfect way to end it all. Thank you again, Vito, for your time. Thank you, everyone
Thank you.
out there listening in today, and we will talk to you soon. Cool, buddy.